The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Friday, April the 10th, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. Second half of the show, Doctors and Scientists with Brian Hooker will be on. And then in a minute, I'm going to be speaking to Elia about homeopathy. But first up, Joshua Coleman from V is for Vaccine. I know loads of you do know who that is. But here he is. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Josh. Doing good. It's been good. It's good to have you back on the show. It's been a while.
Yeah. It's good to see you.
So what have you been up to? Tell us about it. It's exciting what you've been doing.
Well, it's interesting. We had been dealing with pretty consistent vaccine legislation in California for a while. It was 2013, 2015, and so on and so forth. And then we kind of got a break during COVID. And then when COVID ended, all the vaccine legislation really didn't go through very well. And I think the opposition to that to those new bills was great. But I think the entire climate around vaccines in California, not only with Republicans, but also with Democrats, I think a lot of people genuinely had bad experiences with the COVID-19 vaccine. So they just haven't had very good luck with their vaccine legislation. So they took 2 years off, and now they're back with AB 2651.
Okay, talk us through it.
Well, you have a clip of the author of the bill.
Okay, let's do it.
Describing what it is. So let's hear her version before we hear my version.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members. AB 2651 notifies parents when their child's school vaccination rate falls below the level required to achieve herd immunity. The herd immunity rate is the percentage of the population that must be immunized to prevent disease transmission and thus provide some protection even for those who lack immunity. This bill ensures that parents have the information they need to keep their children safe from preventable, communicable diseases.
And your version?
Well, so what the bill actually is that they're going to send a letter home to parents if a school, and we're not clear, the bill is very vague in a lot of places, which usually means like if it's not made more specific, that they can just make it up as they go along in the future. But it's really vague, as in, is it lower vaccine threshold numbers for a whole school, or is it per classroom? There's a particular classroom that's has a lower threshold, and the California Department of Public Health is going to decide what that threshold is. And we don't know if it's going to be all vaccines are going to have the same threshold, different thresholds for different vaccines. And of course, it's really absurd given that some of these vaccines, like the whooping cough vaccine, doesn't stop infection or transmission. So what would the threshold number be? But I'm sure it'll probably be in the neighborhood of probably 95%.
And so what did you do about it? Because you turned up and you spoke out.
Yeah. I've been present for meetings, for hearings at every single piece of vaccine legislation in this state for over the last decade. So yes, of course, I was there, and I gave testimony. If you want to play that clip,
that's it.
Next witness, please.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Joshua Coleman, co-founder of V is for Vaccine, a public demonstration group focused on informed consent and medical choice. I'm here to address a serious concern with this bill: the requirement to notify parents when a school's vaccination rate falls below a state-defined threshold, signaling an increased risk of disease transmission. Now, here's the concern. In California, there is no philosophical exemption from vaccines. There is no religious exemption. The only option left is a narrowly granted medical exemption, meaning the only kids that can be permanently in school without all mandated and required vaccines are kids who have an IEP and kids who have a medical exemption. When the group is this small, anonymity doesn't really exist. So when a school sends a notice home saying vaccination levels are below safe thresholds, because of existing California law, it becomes obvious who is being referenced. There now is a very real risk to those medically vulnerable children, the very children these laws are claiming to protect, to become the target of fear and anger or outright discrimination from other parents and even students. It doesn't take much for a child to be identified, singled out, or blamed. This is not a question of if it will happen, but how often and how severely. Publicly signaling that a school is unsafe because of its IEP and medically exempt students risks stigmatizing disabled children and turning them into scapegoats. Even without intent, this kind of public signaling can function like a modern-day scarlet letter, where a small group of children becomes implicitly marked as the source of risk. This is not a position any child should be put in. Transparency is important, but it must never come at the expense of protecting students from discrimination and harm. Please protect our disabled and vulnerable children and vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well said, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so
You know,
what's the outcome?
What's that?
What happened?
Well, the committee was, I think there was only one Republican on the committee who didn't show up. So they just, there was no discussion after the testimonies from both the opposition and the support, and they took a vote later and everybody supported it. So it's being rammed through at this point, but we may have luck in future committees coming up here.
California.
Yeah. And, it's interesting, doing this for a while, the first thing my mind sort of went to as far as attacking this was, like I was talking about earlier, the fact that herd immunity against amongst the vaccinated isn't really a thing for several reasons. Not to mention, the different diseases that aren't even communicable, or the vaccine doesn't stop infection or transmission. But unfortunately, you got to speak California Democrat when you go to these things. And so for me, I realized that this bill, it violates Section 504, the Rehabilitation Act. It really is going to bring stigmatization of the disabled. And, because it's a letter home saying the school's in danger because some kids aren't getting vaccinated. And then in California, the only ones that can permanently be in school without being vaccinated are disabled kids. So that they know who that is. So, you got to stop and say, what is the reason for this bill? And in my mind, I have two things in my head that, I think that they're doing is, number one, let's create pressure. Let's upset the parents and the students to pressure these kids with medical exemptions to be vaccinated. And you want to hear the more devious version of what I think they may be doing?
Yep.
Okay, let's say they pass this through, right? And next year, they want to pass other kinds of vaccine legislation. Well, how do you get support for that? Okay, well, let's see. A school could literally say, okay, we've got a class with 20 kids. Let's put 2 of the kids in there with medical exemptions. That's going to give us the numbers. Now we can trigger this announcement to send home and upset parents. And we'll do that right before this new legislation. Then the parents are going to be upset. Then the parents will support us on whatever ridiculous thing we want. We could scare every school across California doing that. And they can literally manufacture these events. So that's my big concern, that that may be one of the big things. I really think this is one of those first steps in future legislation, which is mind-blowing, because I think every parent in California, like myself, is saying to themselves, I didn't know they could go any further. I thought we were maxed out here on vaccine legislation. They're still going?
Josh, do you have any support from other parents, though?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we have California parents coming and showing up, and we'll be back there in a couple weeks. And I was thinking it would be really great to be talking about how this is going to stigmatize this group of disabled children surrounded by disabled children. And unfortunately, the physical disabilities kind of go better with a situation like that, because if Billy's standing and he's not talking, you're not going to know anything's wrong with him. So we're really looking for less of the autistic crowd and more of people like Otto, where you can physically, just with your eyes, visually see that person has a disability. So if there are people in California that want to come out to the Capitol in a couple weeks and stand with me, that would be wonderful.
And just remind people about Otto's story just quickly, because maybe some new viewers here.
Yeah, that's my son Otto. He ended up vaccine injured after a 17-month round of vaccines. There's a known adverse reaction from vaccinations called transverse myelitis. It's an autoimmune reaction, and unfortunately, it's sort of left him with flaccid paralysis from the waist down for the rest of his life. So he'll never walk again, and he'll live the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And he will not be getting vaccinated ever again. And I've been lucky that I've been able to, one of the lucky ones in California that's been able to keep his child in school.
That's really hard footage to watch, where you see him walking up those steps.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful for you talking about it. Some people just retreat in and they just like don't want to talk about it. But you've not stopped since the injury. You've been fighting with everything you've got, so other people don't suffer the same consequences.
Yeah, I want to see this end. It's awful, to think about this. This is continuing to go on and on and on, and it's time Californians wake up and start fighting back. And I think, again, people are kind of the fact that they think everything couldn't get worse. They're not really. There are a bit less people sort of participating right now. The activists are kind of disappearing. Of course, they're also disappearing to Tennessee and Florida and Texas and Arizona. But we still do need you to show up. So April 15th will be the next date for this at the California State Capitol. So, it helps to have people there, and if you're able to come up, no matter where you're at in California, it's important. And if you have a disabled child that you can bring with you with a visual disability, that would be wonderful.
So V is for vaccine. Tell everyone about that and how they can get involved.
Well, Views for Vaccine is my public demonstration campaign. This is sort of, put together out of the frustration of being constantly censored online or the limit of my reach on social media being greatly limited. And we like to take big signs or freeway banners or whatever we can out to places where there's lots and lots of people and express something that they probably don't know. And usually it's something about vaccine risk. And so we continue to do that, and we continue to apply pressure throughout the country. So we have a whole lot of different signs and sign messages, and people reach out to us on the regular asking for help in their state, whether it's just creating good, effective messaging, getting signs printed, or coming up with an entire campaign, or using the campaign that's already in existence. So if anybody needs any help with that, we're happy to help you and really get you dialed in and get you out and educating the public.
You also have fun, I noticed. You get dressed up and do things like that. Do people?
Well, yeah, we do try to have fun with it. And, I think, the vaccine issue is so contentious. It sometimes does get hard to break through to somebody and have them just kind of listen to you. And I think that's been something that has actually worked for us, dressing up in costumes themed, whether we're at Comic-Con dressing up like everybody else, or in front of Disneyland dressing up like Disney characters. It definitely softens the blow, when their kids are smiling and happy when they see, what we're doing. That I think that goes a long ways. And, we've gotten a lot of compliments, out doing that. So it's just a fun way to do this and kind of keep it, from being too negative, I guess.
Yeah. And so for those that don't know, Josh traveled on the bus with me 10 years ago with the very first Vax bus. And I don't know how many interviews we did together.
Close to 800. Yeah. In 2016.
Yeah, it was incredible that. So he did that. He also makes short videos for us, for Ron Johnson. And there's two of those, actually. The vaccines cause injury and death, and the other one, which was so important, the unseen severe autism. So we'll put those in the show notes so that you can remind yourself of those. And do share them, everybody, if you can. It's really important we keep doing that. But yeah, amazing videographer. And of course, we're not going to play it right now because we haven't got time, but the favorite Paul Offit piece, it's just probably the most extraordinary piece ever shot.
That was a great day.
It was.
We laughed so much. That was great.
We did laugh. We couldn't believe that was Patrick Layton, the bus driver for the first Vax bus. and then we had a new, and that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was our very first thing, but yeah. All right. Well, Josh, thank you as always for all the work you do and for standing up there and speaking out. Let us know when you're doing that again. And
Absolutely. We'll
fill
do.
the
Yeah.
form on
Yeah.
your
It is April 15th at the Capitol.
April 15th at the Capitol. Just turn up there.
That's right. That's right. It should be, I think the room's 1101. I'll be putting the information out on Views for Vaccine Instagram, so check there, but you'll find us.
Oh, so they can follow V's for Vaccine on Instagram.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, everyone, follow them there and go to the website and you will know exactly where to show up. Josh Coleman, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
See you soon. All right, everyone, now we're going to go straight over to Kim Elia and we're going to talk about homeopathy. Good morning, Kim.
Morning, Polly. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. So tell us what's been going on. We're going to be playing a clip of your movie at the end of this interview before we go to doctors and scientists. But can you tell us a bit about how you got involved in homeopathy and the kind of results you've seen?
Sure. So I was the director of nutrition at Hartwood Institute in Northern California, and I was working with people nutritionally. But, everybody was chewing their buckwheat sprouts 3,000 times per mouthful, so there wasn't really much I could tell them about good nutrition or how to eat right. And I went into the local co-op in Arcata, California, and there was a book there about the homeopathic treatment of various acute and first aid conditions. It was written by a woman by the name of Maisie Panos. And on the back of the book was a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. And the quote said something like, homeopathy cures a larger percentage of cases and is the most effective system of medicine. And that quote really caught my attention because I knew that Gandhi had wanted people of the Indian subcontinent to have pride in their own cultural accomplishments. And they have this system of medicine called Ayurveda. It's thousands of years old. And somehow Gandhi was choosing homeopathy over Ayurveda. I couldn't believe it. So I brought that book home and I read it, and I already had people I was working with nutrition. And so I ordered a remedy kit and I began to give remedies, and I saw really remarkable results. I remember there was this one woman who was very skeptical about homeopathy and she didn't believe in it at all. And she had these terrible migraine headaches that had occurred after she had had a head injury. And she would tie these tight bandanas around her head to feel better, and it was always worse from humid weather. And these are the clear indications of a remedy called natrum sulfuricum. And I tried to persuade her to take the remedy. I said, come on, take the remedy. She said, no, I don't believe in it. And I said, just try it. It can't hurt you. And she said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I put 3 pellets into her mouth. And within a few seconds, it was as if somebody had turned on a faucet. Mucus was pouring out of her nose. She had to run off to the bathroom. And then when I saw her later that day, it was the first time in like 5 years that she hadn't had a headache, and she never had another headache again. So those were the types of experiences that I witnessed early on in my practice. I got many, many stories like that, but that gives you a sense of the power of homeopathy. Actually, I'll just tell you one more. I remember this young woman was running up the hill screaming my name because her son Nick had been hit in the head with an axe, and I had this image of this young boy with an axe in his head, and she was completely freaked out and panicked and screaming. And I grabbed 2 remedies from my kit. One was the remedy aconite, and the other one was arnica. I gave her a dose of aconite, and she calmed down immediately. And when we get down to the bottom of the hill where Nick was, we gave him a dose of the arnica, and he came out of shock. The bleeding stopped, and it was everyone who was there just was. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. So these are the types of experiences that you see in homeopathy. And it's not that it can just treat your acute and first aid conditions. It's able to address even very serious health issues like Parkinson's disease or multiple sclerosis or pneumonias, or, it's even very effective in dealing with a lot of the injuries that occur from vaccines. We've had a very, very positive results with people who've been adversely affected from the mRNA genetic jabs that have been introduced into the population. So we've seen amazing things, and it's been really, for me, a journey to learn and to master homeopathy. And then I've seen so many benefits in my own life and my family's life that I wanted to give something back. So we decided a few years ago to make the film introducing homeopathy and to make that available to a larger audience.
Yeah, so what impact has that film had? I know we played it and people were so grateful writing to us, thanking us for even playing it. But what have you seen?
Yeah, thank you so much actually for showing it. It's really helped us to get it out there. Well, I think more than 500,000 people have seen the film at this point. And we've seen improvement in terms of the understanding of homeopathy around the world. A lot of the schools here in North America who are having students for homeopathy, we're seeing the largest number of cohorts in those various institutions. We've had the film translated into 10 different languages. We even have a German dubbed version. And we're now, working on other film projects so that we can continue to spread the word. And at the end of this, you'll see a little clip that we made. It's actually the beginning of what we call the new series called Investigating Homeopathy. Because even though, see, when we made Introducing Homeopathy, there were other films that had already been made about homeopathy, and they used a kind of approach where you have skeptics and advocates. So you have people arguing against homeopathy and people arguing for homeopathy. And we felt that in our film, we didn't need to give Big Pharma a voice. They've already got enough of a voice on television and the news stations, news cycles, and things of that nature. So we decided to simply talk about all of the amazing benefits of homeopathy. And that really isn't the right type of format for a platform like Netflix or Amazon. And we really want to get this out there so more people know about the opportunity that homeopathy has to offer in terms of dealing with various types of health issues. There are many different health problems for which conventional medicine does not have solutions, but which homeopathy does have an answer for. And so we want to get this out to as many people as possible so people can be aware of it and they can benefit from all that homeopathy has to offer. So we decided after Introducing Homeopathy to make a pilot that we want to submit to Netflix. It's called Investigating Homeopathy, and that is going to use a format which is more appropriate for a platform like Netflix. And so we've been working on that for the last, I'd say, about a year now. We decided to, I have a fairly large mailing list of people who are either homeopaths or people who are enthusiastic about homeopathy. And we sent out an email to that group and we asked if we could get some volunteers. Well, we got 25 people who responded and who said they were interested in volunteering their time to support the project. And so now we have a focus group of about 20 people who are professional script writers and filmmakers. We meet on a weekly basis and we work through and discuss the various aspects of the project that we're working on. And we're hoping that once this is completed, we're going to submit it to Netflix, and we hope that they're going to fund an entire 10-part season, an entire season. And we're going to actually show the first iteration of the film at the National Center for Homeopathy Conference on, I think it's on April 17th, I believe. It's a Friday night. And for people who attend that conference, they'll be able to give us direct feedback about the film. And so we're very, very excited about that. It'll be an opportunity for people to really give their voice and help us to fine tune the pilot so that it really is something that Netflix will want to take on. When we made both Introducing Homeopathy and also when we're creating Investigating Homeopathy, I didn't want it to be just my voice. I wanted to be the voice of the entire homeopathic community. And because really this is something that supports the entire profession. And so we want as much feedback as we can get from people. As a matter of fact, when people see this little clip here, it's actually not finished. It's something that we're still working on, but it'll give you a sense of the humor that we're trying to inject into the project. And of course, we're going to talk about patient cases and the history of homeopathy, the impact it's had here in North America, and many other different aspects of what homeopathy is all about.
We're going to run that in just a second. But before that, just to say for everybody that from today through to next Thursday, you're going to be running the original movie on this link here, childrenshd.org/homeopathy. So for 1 week, people, you will be able to watch that movie free. And so I recommend that you do. Just one last question before we go to the clip. How do people find a reliable homeopath? Because that's the thing, isn't it? We don't know whether we're talking to someone who's wackadoodle or really good. Same with any doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to denigrate anybody, because there's a lot of people who practice homeopathy in different ways. But when we made the film Introducing Homeopathy, we thought, well, we're going to make this film. It's going to be seen by a lot of people. We want to make sure that those people who are interested in homeopathy find really high quality, well-trained practitioners so they don't have a negative experience with homeopathy. So we set up something called Global Natural Health Solutions, which is it's a website telehealth platform. And basically we interviewed basically only medical physicians, so either naturopathic doctors or medical doctors. And these are people who went to naturopathic school, who went to medical school, who were primarily interested and focused about homeopathy. And so they're very, very well trained. They're licensed physicians, and you can get really high quality homeopathic care from these particular people.
Well, Kim Ellis, it's been amazing having you on this morning. We're going to run that clip now, which I think is around 7 minutes long. Maybe, I think.
No, it's a little less than 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, 3-minute clip we're going to run now. But I want to thank you and your team for everything that you've done. And we hope to get you back on and get more updates as time goes on. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Polly. Really appreciate all the work that CHD is doing. It's really important.
Thank you. And so we're going to run the clip and then we're going to go to doctors and scientists.
Thanks.
Human evolution. You might say it's a touchy subject. After all, for every brilliant invention, there are a dozen others that are like the baby cage patented in 1922. Or if you like wearing a bucket for the extra privacy, the isolator. From the walking teapot to butter in a chapstick tube, there are so many questionable ideas out there. It's almost in our DNA. So when you really think about it, it's our job as upstanding citizens to question everything that comes our way. Or evolution might just take us in the wrong direction. It's hard to think of any field where this has happened more than that of medicine. Just look at the Blonsky device, a well-intentioned way to speed up birthing by strapping your pregnant loved one to a table and spinning her around at 8 Gs. Yes, looking back at the evolution of medicine, in many cases, the treatment for diseases was worse than the disease itself. So when a German physician from the 1800s started telling everyone that maybe we should try using less medicine, the idea didn't sound half bad. Touting a new medical system he called homeopathy, he traveled through Europe, claiming incredible results. Homeopathy quickly grew to become one of the dominant medical systems throughout the world. It was supported by 11 American presidents, 7 popes, dozens of world leaders like Gandhi and Mother Teresa. Beethoven even dedicated a special piece to his homeopath. Despite the attention, there are many who consider homeopathy one of the biggest frauds in medical history, which, of course, brings us to the present day.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Doctors and Scientists. It is Friday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I want to bring my wonderful guest on right now, Matthew Cormier. Matthew, first of all, tell me, am I pronouncing your name right?
It's Cormier.
Cormier, okay. You know, I'm sure that everybody, you know, there's like a lot of variations to people pronouncing your name. When you have a name like Hooker, nobody gets it wrong, but they do sniffer a lot.
Yes.
But you are an independent scientist, and I think that so much of the scientific evidence around, especially like autism causation and the etiology of autism that's the most effective is done by independent scientists. So my hat is off to you, first of all, for the impetus to really do your research. And second of all, give me a little snapshot of your background. You said you're currently living in Connecticut. You had a recent publication in the Independent Medical Association's journal. That's really what we're featuring today regarding the prevalence of HSV, herpes simplex virus, in autism. But tell us a little bit more about, you know, first of all, your background and then what led you to write this paper.
I got into medical research about 12 years ago due to my own health problems. with a particular focus on neurological disorders and neurodegenerative disease. There came a point during my journey with dealing with chronic illness and chronic neurological problems where I realized that I needed to be able to read and interpret medical literature on my own.
Right.
That was, like I said, about 12 to 13 years ago. And from there, it became something I became very passionate about. And as of recently, in the past year or two, I've become very aware of the political aspect of a relationship between vaccines acting as a causal factor in autism spectrum disorder. And due to my background, I thought I could make a significant contribution, offer up a new perspective and a new hypothesis on a mechanistic pathway by which potentially vaccines may trigger autism.
What's your background and training, if you don't mind, and that, regardless of whether that bears on the question that you're looking at and the question you're investigating, I think it's a good thing to know.
To be honest with you, I don't have a formal medical education or credentials to speak of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just someone that dealing with chronic illness myself, and I took it upon myself to investigate the etiology of my condition. And like I said, it became something I became very passionate about. And I think understanding medical literature and medical research is the most valuable information a person can have. There's nothing more important than someone's health.
You've gone through a significant amount of literature on your paper. The title of the paper is Vaccine-Induced Viral Reactivation and Autism Spectrum Disorder, a Review, Hypothesis, and Implications. It's in JIM, the Journal of Independent Medicine. It came out in 2025. The number of references that you have in here is pretty, 53 references that you've used in this particular quote unquote hypothesis / theory. So break it down for us. I mean, how did you get to HSV2?
The goal of my paper was to investigate the potential relationship between vaccines acting as a trigger for autism.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, to offer a fresh perspective and a new hypothesis on a potential mechanistic pathway. To begin this investigation, I removed vaccines from the discussion. Okay. Let's take vaccines out of the discussion. What are the documented and known environmental risk factors for autism?
Right.
What does the medical literature show? And when I began researching this and investigating this, I came across a significant body of evidence implicating viral infections, common viral infections like those from the herpes family, such as herpes simplex or CMV, playing a central role in the development of ASD. There's multiple studies dating back to the early 1970s documenting rubella infection in pregnant women and a significantly increased likelihood of giving birth to an autistic child. Similar research showed the same connection between viruses like CMV or other herpes family viruses like herpes simplex type 2. Viral infections during pregnancy, particularly, like I said, those herpes family viruses, there's a statistically significantly higher likelihood of having a child with autism if they occur. There's other research as well, and it's pretty well established that any type of acute inflammatory event during pregnancy or as well as chronic inflammatory conditions can contribute to autism, having an autistic child. I had that, and I thought to myself, well, let's keep investigating viral infections. If viral infections might be involved during pregnancy in causing autism in children, is there any other research postnatal implicating viral infections and causing autism?
Right.
And I came across a series of case reports that were really, really interesting to me. There are case studies documenting healthy neurotypical people across various age groups, such as an 11-year-old child, a 14-year-old teenager, even a 31-year-old man that, again, were neurotypical, healthy, who experienced a bout with viral encephalitis, in particular herpes simplex encephalitis, which, to put it simply, it's where a viral infection crosses the blood-brain barrier and triggers an inflammatory pathology in the central nervous system. So these people were healthy, neurotypical. They experienced herpes simplex encephalitis, the virus responsible for cold sores, It made its way into their brain. They had a episode of viral encephalitis, and within the coming weeks to months, they started displaying symptoms of autism and went on to meet all of the clinical diagnostic criteria, except for one, which would be it didn't occur during the developmental stage in their life. That was very damning evidence to me that viral infections may be directly involved in causing autism. There was another paper published examining the prevalence of herpes simplex type 2 autoencephalon antibodies and in children with autism versus a control group. The prevalence globally for herpes simplex type 2 is about 13%. So that means 13% of the global population are carriers for herpes simplex type 2, the virus primarily responsible for genital herpes. In this particular study, 65% of the autistic children were carriers for herpes simplex type 2.
Wow.
Given the fact that the primary mode of transmission for this virus is sexual contact, it implies that this virus was caught in utero from mother to child during pregnancy or during birth. Obviously, these children weren't engaging in high-risk behaviors themselves to acquire HSV2. But the paper went on to document that 65% of the children in the autistic group were carriers for herpes simplex type 2. Not only that, they tested for high levels of IgM antibodies, which would indicate acute or active infection. Of these children that had active herpes simplex type 2 antibodies and active herpes simplex type 2 infection, 96% of them also had anti-encephalon antibodies, which would mean autoimmune antibodies targeting the brain. There's other research as well in regards to immune system dysregulation that supports a potential role of viral infections in the etiology and pathology of ASD. Children with autism often suffer from impaired natural killer cell function.
Right.
And natural killer cells are one of the primary immune responses to active virus. Natural killer cells will clear viral infection. And it's shown in multiple studies that those with autism have a suppressed natural killer cell response. Those with ASD also suffer from elevated cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It's basically it puts the body and the immune system into a state of fight or flight, but in regards to inflammatory processes, cortisol is anti-inflammatory. So if someone has an active infection and they have elevated cortisol, it'll weaken the immune response. It'll dampen and suppress an immune response. And elevated cortisol also will lower natural killer cell function.
This is stunning information, amazing evidence. Just a few quick questions. Has anybody looked at HSV2 in the brains of autistic cadavers, or have they looked at it in mouse models of the brains? Has anybody looked at brain-specific HSV2, or is it all just more systemic?
I believe it's more systemic. As far as post-mortem tissue analysis for those with ASD, that research is very, very limited.
Yeah, it is. I couldn't agree more. We need more of it. And then also on the cortisol related issue, one of the things that I've seen, and if you can't comment on this, that's fine. That's absolutely okay. Is that there's a suppression of the innate immune system, things like natural killer cells, but in some ways because of the sort of hyperstimulation that's going on, because of problems with the complement cascade and so forth, is that like the Th2 arm of acquired immunity, not innate immunity, but the Th2 arm, it tends to be overactive. How does that bode with the issues of, say, like autoimmunity? If you can't comment, that's absolutely fine. And are there other mechanisms that would sort of for immune dysregulation that would cause autoimmunity?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of research on what you're speaking about in regards to autism and many other diseases and conditions. But traditionally speaking, immune function is separated into two sides, a Th1 response and then a Th2 response. A Th1 response would be for acute infections, acute pathogens, viral infections, bacterial infections. It leans more towards cellular immunity and a cell-mediated immune response. A Th2 response, traditionally speaking, is anti-inflammatory, and it's associated with allergens. Allergens to things in a person's diet, allergens to environmental factors as well. The problem is that when the immune system is skewed towards a Th2 response, it can create viral reservoirs inside the body. It's also involved in autoimmunity. The three kind of act synergistically: immune system dysregulation, viral infections, and autoimmunity. That's the three kind of tend to go hand in hand. In regards to autism specifically, this leads into the second aspect of my paper. So the first part of my review was looking at research showing a connection and a causal relationship between viruses, common viruses like herpes simplex, and autism. The second aspect of my review and of my paper was answering the question, if viral infections cause autism, where do vaccines come into play? Vaccines are supposed to prevent viral infections. And when I began researching this and investigating this, I came across a phenomenon known as vaccine-induced viral reactivation. It's where a person receives a vaccine and any latent or dormant viral infections they're already carrying, such as those from the herpes family, like herpes simplex type 1 or CMV, can become reactivated. And when I started investigating the mechanistic pathway, well, how? It leads back into this discussion that we were just talking about, Th2 and Th1 response. Adjuvants in vaccine, like aluminum, promote a Th2 response. It skews the immune system to a Th2 response. And what tends to happen is that undermines and it suppresses cellular immunity, a cell-mediated immune response. And in regards to viral infections, a Th2, there's research to suggest that if the immune system is skewed towards a Th2 response, an allergen response, it can lead to viral reactivation. Also, that skewing, as I mentioned, it downregulates cellular immunity, which again could contribute to viral reactivation. And I think that's the primary mechanism. I think that adjuvants in vaccines like aluminum or the formerly used preservatives like ethyl mercury, they skew the immune response to a Th2 dominant state. And when that happens, any infections a person's already carrying, particularly viruses, can reactivate. And once those viruses are reactivated, they can trigger various inflammatory pathologies. In the context of the discussion on autism, if a vaccine reactivates a virus that a child's already carrying, let's say like herpes simplex, and that virus crosses the blood-brain barrier either through the nasal passages or the spinal cord, we could see viral encephalitis. And so that's the basis of my hypothesis. I think viral infections like herpes simplex, common viruses, are directly involved in causing autism. By way of viral encephalitis acting as a trigger. And I think vaccines act as a catalyst for this by reactivating these viruses, by suppressing our immune responses to the viral infections we're already carrying. And that's the link, in my opinion.
You've done such a great job in terms of, walking through the actual steps. I've got a couple more questions. The first one is that besides HSV2, you mentioned like rubella during pregnancy, and are there other viral triggers, or do you see it more overwhelmingly as an HSV2 activation? I'm thinking back to the Mora paper, and that the antibodies for HSV2 compared to measles, rubella, some of the others showed a statistically significant difference between autistic individuals and controls. The others evidently did not.
There's research to suggest that CMV is another virus that's directly involved, but that one in particular is predominantly congenitally acquired viral infections.
Right.
So in utero, a woman acquires CMV when she's pregnant or has a reactivation of CMV that she's already carrying.
Right.
There's vertical transmission. An inflammatory pathology happens in the developing fetus. And then there's neurodevelopmental disorders. There's issues with hearing. A lot of different chronic health conditions can be brought upon by this, with autism being one of them.
The reactivation happens, because of the suppression of the innate immune system, a suppression of the Th1 arm as well. Is there any evidence that, some of these kids present herpes, like traditionally what you would expect in herpes, like a herpes sore, or is are you just more seeing evidence of like encephalitis?
Generally speaking, a lot of the medical literature in regards to, let's say, viral meningitis or viral encephalitis, typically one would assume there would be a skin presentation, cold sores, blisters, but that's not the norm.
Okay.
There's many case studies and case reports and a lot of research showing that when herpes viruses reactivate, it doesn't always present itself with a cold sore or genital blisters. A person could experience viral encephalitis or viral meningitis without any of those, which makes diagnosing this so challenging for physicians.
I'm nerding out on this, and so then I start to ask questions. But what about the activation that happens? There's a lot of cell debris. I mean, when things like adjuvants are interacting with the body, especially aluminum salts, I mean, because these are depots. These are not, they're nanoparticles that are being released. What, if any, do you think role might, the damage that's associated with, like damage-associated molecular patterns, that and the other gunk that is left over, because there's a lot of cell damage, human cell damage and human cell death associated, with aluminum adjuvants, with thimerosal, and then specifically for the mitochondria. Do you see a connection there? There is a huge focus on mitochondrial autism and the fact that these kids have a mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah, I read your recent paper.
Oh, cool.
Autism, aluminum adjuvants, and autoimmunity. Don't quote me on the title, but I read your recent paper. I thought that paper was fantastic.
Well,
it's
thank
certainly
you.
possible. In regards to the causal role vaccines may have in autism, it could be multifactorial. There could be many mechanisms that are at play here. And what you're suggesting, what your research was suggesting, I thought was very compelling.
Okay.
That it's possible viral infections may be affecting a subset of children, or possibly not at all, and that it's adjuvants, it's just the adjuvant themselves and the immune system dysregulation that it creates.
Well, I think that there are multiple pathways to this. I mean, from a syndrome perspective, there are multiple things that cause neuroinflammation.
Sure.
And so, I'm not necessarily saying either or. I'm saying it could be both. I mean, because when you look at an assault, I remember my son's own regression, and he fevered for 18 days. And so that very well could have been a viral encephalitis, viral encephalopathy. We call it encephalitis, encephalopathy, I think appropriately, because obviously there was neuroinflammation. But I wouldn't doubt that the etiology definitely could be viral.
Did your son have an active ear infection the day he received those vaccines?
Totally.
Did you ever identify what that infection was?
No, not really. I mean, it's all so very murky, and there were so many layers of opinions on it, and so I don't know if that was like it could be Haemophilus, it could be something else, but no, we never identified that particular agent.
Sure. I think when I was doing my research, there's so many variables involved with medical research and establishing a hypothesis. There are a lot of children that receive vaccines and they're relatively okay afterwards. They don't develop regressive autism.
Right.
So there's biological variables that are predisposing children. In your paper, you suggested that it could be genetic variants involved.
Part of it, yeah.
Sure. And there's research to support that. But in my particular take was that the majority of case reports and anecdotal reports from parents suggest that a child receives a child is developing neurotypically, meeting all their developmental milestones. They receive a vaccine or a series of vaccines. And in the case of, let's say, the argument for aluminum adjuvants playing a primary role in this, MMR vaccines don't contain aluminum adjuvants.
Correct.
So, and there's a lot of research and a lot of anecdotal reports that the MMR vaccine was the trigger. So there's many, many variables here. And I think that like you mentioned, every one of these variables and all of this research should be further explored. There should be further inquiry because something's happening.
I couldn't agree more.
But my take is that the presentation, a child receives a vaccine, there's a period of acute illness, often accompanied by high fever and seizures as well. And once that acute illness phase starts to come to an end, that's normally when autism regression occurs. And to me, that matches the case reports almost identically as far as herpes simplex encephalitis acting as the trigger for ASD.
Right.
It's very similar, and it would present very similar clinically. And if you didn't have doctors that were trained to spot this and look for this, specifically, let's say if a child wasn't having a typical cold sore outbreak when this was occurring, they might miss it. But I'm hoping that's the goal of my paper, to get my hypothesis tested. And
absolutely. Well, what's next? I mean, how does that happen, and how what steps are you able to take next, if any, and then what would be helpful?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't have the means and resources to carry out the research and to really explore this hypothesis myself. I'm going to need help with that. But I think the most accurate, this would be considered unethical and it would not be safe for any children involved. But the most accurate way to determine whether or not this was happening would be CSF analysis after vaccination. Anytime there's evidence suggesting a neurological event happening, immediate CSF analysis. But anytime there's a lumbar puncture, there is very, very serious risk for long-term consequences just from that procedure.
Absolutely. No, you almost think like you could look at a study where they are doing lumbar punctures, which there are, and that maybe, it's not very difficult to test for the presence, of these particular viruses, especially HSV2.
Sure. I've looked into this quite a bit, and there's what's known as the hit and run hypothesis. I also contacted Abbott Molecular, which produces PCR tests used for CSF analysis. Generally speaking, it's about a 72-hour window during primary infection for a viral infection in the brain. After that, the results can be skewed and you lose accuracy as time goes on. Viral infections are implicated in many, many neurological conditions and diseases, and more research is coming out every day, whether it's multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, a lot of things. So I think that there's a lot more research to be conducted on this.
Absolutely.
My opinion may be biased, obviously, but I think viral infections play a central role in the development of ASD.
Well, I thank you for that. You've done an amazing job, and you've uncovered, something that obviously needs further consideration, experimentally, as well as looking at what's going on in the open literature. So thank you for that. And then, and Matthew, please keep us updated too, because, as more publications come out too, there again, you bring up an important point regarding the MMR vaccine not having aluminum. There are other vaccines in the schedule that do not have aluminum that there have been associated with regressive autism. So I appreciate that point, and I think that we need to keep our minds open for these hypotheses, because there are multiple factors that could be coming into play. And the more that we know about this, the more that we know about, viral activation, because of things like vaccination, the better off we are, and the more that we can prevent, and reverse the autism epidemic.
I agree with you, Brian, wholeheartedly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your work. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this important episode of Doctors and Scientists. Matthew Cormier, independent researcher, independent scientist. The publication is Vaccine-Induced Viral Reactivation and Autism Spectrum Disorder, a review, hypothesis, and implications in the Journal of Independent Medicine. I believe this is an open source article too, right?
It is. I just want to say, Brian, it's an honor to be recognized and acknowledged by you and Children's Health Defense today for my paper. I really appreciate it. And, I'm interested to see where this goes. And I appreciate you highlighting this today.
Yeah, keep us informed, Matthew. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, we are live. So tell us your name
Janelle Sullivan.
and who are you?
Joseph Sullivan.
And how old are you?
I'm 9.
Okay, good. Right, who's going to tell the story, you or Mum?
Well,
Mom.
I was recovered, but I actually forgot most of it, and I moved on.
That's
Basically, from it.
moving on is a good thing to do. But let's hear from your mum what happened.
So I had a bad feeling about vaccines from the beginning, but I felt like it was a battle that I couldn't win especially with my in-laws. And so at 2 months, JoJo had encephalopathy reactions, the screaming, the back arching. And at 4 months, it was downplayed, no big deal. I wanted them split up. And they gave him the pediatrics, and again, I was afraid he was going to die. By 6 months, I was out. We're not vaccinating this kid anymore. His father took him to the pediatrician and got him all of his vaccines until he was 21 months old and had a seizure. That was following a DTaP and a flu vaccine. We had an agreement he would never have a flu shot. But because of the every child by 21, or by 2, every child by 2, his insurance paid $400 for every child in the practice, so long as 2/3 of the practice was fully vaccinated on their second birthday.
This is the father of him you're talking about, or the pediatrician? What,
Well, the pediatrician made sure that he got everything on the schedule, including the vaccines that we agreed he would not have.
Okay, so you're talking about the pediatrician needs to have a certain
Right, the pediatrician needed to have him fully vaccinated by his second birthday. So even though we agreed he wouldn't have a flu shot, he had one with a DTaP. In his medical file where it says mom wants one vaccine at a time with the chicken pox, they gave him Hep A. When he was born, the birthing center said, do you want to vaccinate your son for a sexually transmitted disease that he can't possibly catch? And I said, no. So when he was 2 months old, I said, I don't want him having any unnecessary vaccines for an STD. So they said, oh, Hep A is not necessary. And then they gave him Hep B for a sexually transmitted disease and everything else on the schedule and tricked me. So after 21 months and the seizure, we stopped vaccinating. At 2.5 years old, I called a naturopath. And I said, he's banging his head on cement to bleed, but this is normal, right? And she said, no, this is not normal. He has encephalopathy. This is serious, and you need to take this serious. She made me cry, but she made me take it seriously. I hated anybody who said my kid had autism. He was diagnosed after his MMR. He was in early intervention services, and I was in denial. When I had my appointment with the early developmental pediatrician, his speech therapist sat me down and said, you need to be okay with him being diagnosed with autism. So I canceled the appointment. I didn't need to be okay with that. I was not okay with that. So we canceled the appointment. So the naturopath, I knew my son had encephalopathy, brain damage from brain inflammation from his vaccines. So after 6 months of doing diet and slowly adding some supplements, we started doing the CEASE therapy protocol, which stands for Complete Elimination of Autism Spectrum Expression. The doctor who created this treatment recovered over 300 kids and adults from autism. He wrote a book, Autism Beyond Despair, and was dead 2 weeks later. But he recovered almost everybody that he treated, including adults. So that's amazing. And when I read that book, when we started the CEASE protocol, we lost all of his diet gains. When we got rid of gluten, we got rid of head banging on cement to bleed. He still banged his head, but he didn't bang it to the point where I thought he was going to kill himself banging it. When we got rid of dairy, we got rid of asthma. And And I was like, oh my God, he's cured. But he was 2 years old, and I was just convincing him he wasn't cured. We were managing autism with diet, is what we were doing. And then when we started the CEASE protocol, which we started with this flu vaccine, they take, there's a pharmacy, a homeopathic pharmacy. And so what we did was we shared with them the lot number that he received back in October 2015. And so they take 1 drop from that lot to 99 drops of water. That makes a 1C dilution. Then they take 1 drop from that to 99 drops of water. It makes a 2C, 2 to the 100th dilution. By the time you get to a 16C dilution, there's no molecule from that original flu vaccine. There's water with a memory of it. When you get to 30C, they take 1 drop and put them on sugar pellets. Then when they get to 200C, they put another drop on another set of sugar pellets. 1M is 1000C, 10M is 10,000C. I've got 4 little vials that are mailed to me. I started off with 3 little pellets every Saturday underneath his tongue, which, I mean, he just chewed them and ate them like candy. He didn't leave them under his tongue like you're supposed to do. And it didn't matter. But it totally caused him to go back into full-blown autism. And all of the diet gains, it was like they were gone. And my ex-husband was like, we're not doing this anymore. And I was like, oh, we're doing this. I don't know what we're doing, but we're doing it. And that's when I joined the CEASE group and found out my son had autism, and my naturopath was treating him for autism. And we watched the Vaxxed movie, and I made my ex-husband watch it. And Billy's story was like just like JoJo's. I mean, my mom and my ex-husband were like, oh my God, that's JoJo. Oh my God, that's JoJo. And then when he was 18, wanting to beat up his dad, that's when my ex-husband surrendered and said, you can do the CEASE therapy. So by the time we finished that 30C dose, I had kisses from him. And his speech therapist said, whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Mom, I hate kisses.
Yeah, but we still had some. And when we got to 200C, it was like being at square one. The absentee seizures came back. He banged his head on cement to bleed for the last time. Poop art, the whole works. And when we finished that dose, we had meaningful speech and I had hugs. And I couldn't touch him without him punching himself when we started. So for me to have hugs from him and kisses was like completely huge. I'm a massage therapist. I am not a refrigerator mother. I need to be able to kiss this kid.
That's right.
So we went to 1M and I was like, he is having MMR reactions. These are not the reactions that he had when he had his flu vaccine right now. This is what happened when he had MMR. He spun around in circles and we couldn't bathe him anymore. And when we finished that dose, he drew an outline of a car. Before that, like, it would just be like hard pressing with crayon, but there wasn't any, he wasn't drawing like a normal child. And by the time we finished that dose, he drew the outline of a car, like a normal child.
I just need to tell the viewers, because I have to put a disclaimer in here, that Children's Health Defence does not give out medical advice. This is just your experience with your son, and so we have to put that in because we have to, people, don't we? Okay.
So the next dose was 10M. He stopped fighting for his poop. We took 2 weeks off. We've repeated it. And 30C, he headbutted me, screamed for 40 minutes, and instantly had reciprocal language. 200C, he had explosive poop reactions and painting with it for 6 months. And we had a parent-teacher conference in September of 2018. And I asked his teacher about potty training, and she said he was absolutely not ready, which I already knew to be true. Monday, he was 100% potty trained. That was a Thursday. Monday, woke up, he knew all NFL fight songs, Angry Browns Christmas carols, could hit a baseball, could catch a football, and our autism nightmare was over. And we did another round and a half. We finished that round. We did another round of the flu. Then we did the MMR detox. And when we did MMR at 200C, that bulging fontanelle came back when he was 5 years old. His cease reaction was to masturbate, wanting to kill me. And 2 days later, I had snuggles from him for the first time since he was 15 months old and got the MMR vaccine. I have video of him punching on his dad, wanting to kill a baby bird. These were MMR detox reactions. And the gains that we got from that detox were his art skills and then being completely non-aggressive. And in August 2020, he actually went under anesthesia, and he got his diagnosis back in school last year, but he's doing, it isn't like severe autism, what he has now from the anesthesia. And then there's two things that we're detoxing right now. The anesthesia and the spike protein. I have a girlfriend whose son had horrible pandas reactions. When his father got the COVID vaccine, he dropped her son off at his house that night and said, I cannot handle. If you can't deal, drop him off at the emergency room, but do not bring him back to my house. And she got titers done, and his titers were off the charts for the spike protein. Not the coronavirus, but for the spike protein. And then I've seen other kids that are detoxing the spike protein and getting gains. There was a post that a CEAS practitioner posted about detoxing the spike protein in the 4 adults in the house and the child, and the kid recovering from autism. So we just started the spike protein detox 2 weeks ago, and that caused him to feel nauseous. So nobody in his household had the COVID vaccine. He did not have the COVID vaccine, but he definitely suffered some problems during the COVID lockdowns.
Yeah, I'm sure. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I don't really know yet.
That's okay, you have some time.
Though I am thinking about whatever makes the most money.
Okay. Well,
you got to keep your soul, though, right?
Oh, yeah, but... Well, for example, if... Let's say...
He's off the charts intelligent.
Well, yeah, I mean, some things can make money.
Someone's got to make the money around here, right? Someone's got to do it. Well, look, thank you both for being here, for telling your story, your advice, and for you as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you write your name on the bus yet?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. Do you know what number you are?
I'm 630 something.
636.
636. Okay. Guess which number we will not be having on the bus?
What?
It's coming up soon. Okay.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.